So it turns out preparing for a TEDx talk is actually a lot of work. It's a real examination of your story, your message, what idea you think is worth sharing. At one stage during my process, somewhere between script version 13.2 and moment of doubt 48, one of my friends said to me, "Look, Michelle, it seems like a massive headache. I don't know why you bother." And that got me thinking, why was I bothering? Why do I bother doing a lot of the things I do? A lot of people just don't bother. So I decided to take a look at bothering. And here's what I've come up with so far. We live in a society where people living on the same street are less likely to call themselves neighbours than ever before. We live in an age where some people are more likely to pull out their smartphone to video a car crash than bother to call 111 on it than ever before. Our world has lost some touch and lost some trust. We sit in a waiting room, pull out a backlit screen to pass the time instead of reaching for a magazine or talking to someone. We read a news headline online, not the whole article, mind you, and we can angrily type our response online immediately. We don't need to put a stamp on an envelope to do that, nor bother to check the facts, and we're not connected to the people who will read our words. And it's ironic, too, because as humans, we're wired to connect. We're wired for belonging. It's been well documented that social integration, the quality and quantity of interactions with other people you encounter every day, they're a strong predictor for living a long and healthy life. When we're part of a group, belong to a club, have a close circle of friends, are engaged in our work, and don't feel alone, at least some of the time, life is better. It just is. That's why mums long to find a great mums group, and Lego fans love to meet one another at expos. Groups and even sporadic connections provide us with valuable reassurance that there's community out there. We can belong. So, okay, on the one hand, we have this low-touch world emerging. Digital communities often lived out online with very little anchoring in the real world. And on the other hand, we all feel something when we're part of a face-to-face group. We all felt something when I described how that sense of belonging matters, right? So this is the conflict that I felt in my friend's offhand comment. I don't know why you bother. A lot of people wouldn't bother. But here I am, bothering. It's a funny little English word, bother, often used negatively. We all do it. We catch ourselves saying, "Don't bother. Why bother? I can't be bothered." And if, like me, you grew up soaked in the cultural wonderland that is the Catherine Tate show, you may know Lauren Cooper and her endless question, "Look at my face. Am I bothered?" Well, you're not bothered, love, but I am. So let's flip that. To bother is to make an effort to do something. It's about going to trouble, taking the time. It's about love and caring. Bothering is an act of service, and I think it's worth it. I'd love to see that little verb better known for its bright side, its active and engaged meaning. Because bothering is ancient. Its roots wind back to a time when shit just didn't get done unless someone bothered. And we used to know how to bother. We learnt it from those who bothered greatly in our communities. This year, we celebrate the 125th anniversary of women's suffrage here in New Zealand. It took 15 years of political effort and petitioning for women here to change history when they went to vote alongside men for the first time on the 28th of November, 1893. Their success began a movement that rippled around the world. It took 46 years in the UK. 46 years of bothering. How grateful am I for all that bothering? Where would we be if it were not for the botherers of this world? Botherers at Standing Rock, botherers ending apartheid, botherers for nuclear-free New Zealand. When you bother, even on tiny things, people light up. Our human world is built for bothering. And if you haven't guessed it by now, I'm trying to be a botherer too. Recently, I helped to establish something new in our region. We've launched the Waikato Women's Fund, Te Ira Wahine o Waikato, joining over 200 other women's funds around the world. Alongside other botherers, other awesome women, I helped to create a fund that harnesses the unique way that women give. Women are generating and controlling their own wealth in growing numbers. Studies show that women are more likely to give than men. Over their lifetime, they'll give more, and they'll give it more often. That's remarkable. And that requires a shift from traditional models. But it took some bothering, let me tell you. The Waikato Women's Fund isn't like other funds, where memberships are only permitted with donations of a certain size. Ours is a collective, not a club. The Waikato Women's Fund accepts donations of any size. Even giving $5 gets you in as a member. And members have a say in how we distribute funds to groups and organisations working to improve outcomes for women and girls here in this region. One focus, only that. It's a cool model, a model that allows for a closer connection between donors, the process of making a grant, and the recipients. And I really care about that through this fund we could create a more equal future for young girls like my nieces and my friends' daughters. It's the power of women for the dreams of girls. We're bothering to do something different with this fund because we know that other people want to bother too. Bothering sometimes takes skill and courage, but I think that can be learnt. I wasn't born a botherer. I don't come from a long line of famous botherers, but something happened in 2015 that taught me a lot about bothering and how absolutely possible it is to get better at it. That year, our family were cared for by Rainbow Place, New Zealand's only specialist children's and young persons hospice service. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law were living through the hardest circumstances you can imagine. None of us knew how to cope. So thank goodness for the amazing staff at Rainbow Place, because these were professional botherers. I'd expected them to be gentle and empathetic people, and they were, believe me. And they also raised really hard conversations, the most awful sorts of decisions you'll ever face. And I learned that this was kindness too, that decisions can't be avoided when time is short. They'd gained trust with their endless wraparound care, and they'd poured hours of time and love into our family, so then that through tears and grief and lostness, they could firmly but kindly raise the things that everyone wanted to avoid discussing. They did not shy away from bothering, not once. I was fascinated by this. How did they do that? Talking to the nursing team leader, I discovered that it was just a skill she'd learnt in training. She described having spent weeks of her training on practicing hard conversations. All the trainee nurses had to face their deepest fears in supporting a family. They worked with actors to recreate the situations they most dreaded, and they were filmed doing role plays. And then they watched the video replay, listened to their students critique their efforts, and then they did it all over again and again until it got better, until the fear eased. You can learn how to do the hardest bothering. Bothering is a learnable skill. The things we think are part of who people are often actually just learnable skills. So we should try. We really should. Because not bothering leaves a void, a space that is empty. Not bothering leaves the loop open, questions, unknowns. When we hear about an assault in a public place in broad daylight or a case of child abuse over many years, people say, why didn't someone do something? How did they let it get so bad? And this creates such unrest in communities. And people are hurt when bothering is absent. A few years ago, a friend of mine revealed to me she was concerned her midwife wasn't taking her seriously. She was pregnant for the second time and worried about a relapse into postnatal depression. She raised this very valid, very honest concern with her midwife, and she was brushed away. She wanted to talk about support, make a plan, and she was made to feel silly. This left her feeling silenced and even more anxious. One night she told me about her situation. I was shocked. Must have said so too. Luckily, she trusted me to help her, and so I did. I gave her contact details of other midwives that I knew would know how to bother. And a few calls later, my friend spoke with a new midwife, someone who made her feel instantly important. Although she felt bad to do it, she ended her partnership with her current midwife and switched. She bothered herself when someone else had failed to. She changed midwives at 38 weeks pregnant to someone who listened, someone who bothered, and she relaxed. She had a great birth, and her new midwife helped her through those early days with her new baby. The absence of bothering from her first midwife could have had some very serious consequences. I think bothering's important stuff. When you bother, you're in the present, not the past or the future. You're living your purpose now as a creature made for connection. We do a lot of bothering at Magnetic Hub. Magnetic Hub began life as a group for high-performing women, but over time, we've stripped away those labels, making it accessible to everyday women, because I turned up one night. Not corporate, not feeling like a high performer, didn't really know what it was all about. I can still remember the doubt and the uncertainty of showing up, looking around the room for clues that I belonged. And I remember other women bothering to include me, bothering to get to know me. 3 years on, and my role has grown. I am now head botherer. I love what we do at Magnetic Hub and the environment that we create in our monthly meetings. I feel really blessed to lead this community of women. When we meet in our monthly groups, it looks so much like an ancient thing. Women in a circle, talking. And whilst women today might not be shelling the peas or sewing clothes, we're still drawn together in a circle to talk. Magnetic Hub is a mechanism for meaningful conversations. Women get the chance to hear their own voice spoken aloud, and other women get the chance to play audience and listen deeply to someone's story. There's trust and connection. We bother with each other. Women feel safe to speak, and they have such beautiful stories to tell. Listening deeply is a powerful form of bothering. Have you ever felt truly heard? Isn't it wonderful? Have you ever heard yourself speak, heard words tumble out your mouth in a really unplanned way, heard your own voice, such a rare sound, and stopped and thought, there's my truth. I found that all by myself just because someone let me speak and they listened. In the early days at home, as a new mother, I longed to speak my truth. This is hard. I'm not sure I like this. Who am I? Who was I? I didn't feel comfortable sharing that. So instead, I spent a fair amount of time wishing. I had a hard time breastfeeding, so when my second son was growing in my belly, I used to spend a fair amount of time wishing for a new experience, hoping I'd get to live it differently second time round. I used to dream, this may sound weird, I used to dream of getting a cracked nipple or mastitis. Anyone listening who's also had low milk supply might know what that feels like. Anyway, the new baby came and the milk didn't, and I just wailed and cried into my pillow at the mystery and the injustice of this. But then one day, I remember it so vividly. I sat up all bleary after a good cry, and I looked around and I could see I still had a dirty house filled with 2 hungry boys waiting for me. So I just got up and got on with something that kept me busy. And that's been a huge life lesson for me, to get on with something, because nothing was ever fixed from waiting and wishing. That's not how bothering works. Looking back now, I realise that my untold story deserved an audience. Bothering is a two-way street, give and receive. So I learned a hard lesson about the importance of asking for what you need. Let someone bother. Let someone help. I'm still far better at providing bothering for others than I am at receiving bother when I need it. I'm just not a great receiver. I've got bothering wrong in the past. I've missed chances that should have been taken. I'm not perfect at it, and I don't think I ever will be. But that's the good thing about bothering. It's just an A for effort kind of movement. As long as you have good intent, you can't go too wrong. The path that led me here to this stage, the moments of doubt that went into this talk today, it was worth bothering with. And I'm so glad that you all bothered to come and listen. And now you, I wonder, are you a botherer? If you are, bother on, my friend. May that bother muscle stay strong. But look after yourself. Remember to receive some bother back and know that you're worthy of being bothered with. But if you're not sure how to get started, if you're looking for a kick in the pants with bothering, here are my 2 top tips. 1, just start. Don't think too hard about it. I'm a deep thinking head dweller, and I used to spend so much time wishing. But bothering, when reduced to silent thinking, is often a recipe for distress, because bothering's active. It happens out there in the real world. And the more you do it, the more it flows. Just start. 2, bothering doesn't have to be your unique idea. Bothering is welcome effort. I didn't actually start Magnetic Hub or the Waikato Women's Fund, but I know what I can do to help take them forwards. There are so many movements and causes that would love to receive some of your bother. You can join in with other botherers. I hope you find something to bother with, a small act of bothering or a bigger bother. You choose. Just get out there and care. This is bothering. It is worth making an effort. Thank you.